I didn't know any of it when I turned onto our street. All I knew was that my flight had landed late, my phone was at 2%, and my body was running on fumes. 5 days of polite dinners, long meetings, and pretending hotel coffee was acceptable. I wanted my shower, my bed, quiet. Then I saw my daughter. Ella is 7, and she was standing at the gate, not playing, not pacing, just standing there perfectly still, like someone had put her down and forgotten to come back. For a split second, my brain tried to make it normal. Maybe she was waiting. Maybe she just stepped outside. Maybe. Then I saw her shoulders hunched tight, her arms locked against her sides. The way she didn't move when my car stopped, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to. I got out. Ella. She turned her head slowly. Her lips were tinged blue. Snow clung to the knees of her pants. Her eyelashes were wet. "Mum," she said. Not relief. A question. That's when I saw the sign. Huge. White post. Red letters, sold. And a single, terrifying thought clicked into place. Someone had decided my child didn't belong here anymore. If you're watching, take a breath with me. Like, comment, subscribe. Because some betrayals don't shout. They smile, lock the door, and tell a 7-year-old to wait in the snow. I reached for Ella's hand and turned toward the house. The door wasn't locked. The door wasn't locked. That detail hit me like a warning I didn't understand yet. I took Ella's hand and walked inside anyway. The house smelled wrong. Cardboard, tape, that sharp, chemical clean meant to erase evidence. The hallway was no longer a hallway. It was a staging area. Boxes stacked tight against the walls, some sealed, some torn open, like someone had changed their mind halfway through taking my life apart. Black marker bled through the cardboard. Sarah, Ella, my chest went hollow. Not empty, hollow. Like something had been scooped out and left echoing. Mom came out of the kitchen first. She looked irritated, not guilty, not startled, irritated, like I'd come home early and interrupted a plan that was running behind. Dad hovered a step behind her, holding a roll of packing tape. Frozen, like he'd been caught mid-crime and hadn't decided yet whether to lie or pretend nothing was happening. Samantha sat at the dining table, scrolling her phone, legs crossed. She was humming, softly, casually. Like this was a delay, not a demolition. "You're back," Mom said. "Yes," I said. "I live here." Her eyes flicked to Ella. A glance. Nothing more. "She's inside now," Mom said. "That's good." "You left her outside," I said. "I said she had a coat." I looked past her. The walls were stripped. The lighter rectangles where Ella's drawings used to hang stared back at me like scars that hadn't healed yet. "What is going on?" I asked. Dad cleared his throat. "We sold the house?" The words didn't land. They hovered, waiting for my consent. "You did what?" "We sold it," Mom said again, slower. Careful, patient, like I was the one being unreasonable. "You refused to listen. You wouldn't help, so we handled it." Samantha finally looked up from her phone. "It's for the family," I breathed out. It almost sounded like a laugh. "You sold my house. You're not on the deed." Dad straightened, like posture could make him right. "We had a power of attorney. For emergencies," I said. "For Ella, not for selling my property." Mom waved her hand. Dismissive. Bored. "Details. You don't need a house this big anyway. You travel, you're divorced. Samantha needs help." Samantha smiled. Thin. Settled. "You could always rent." I looked down. Ella's face was pressed into my shoulder. Her fingers were twisted into my sweater so tight the fabric stretched. She wasn't crying. She was bracing. "You told my child she was homeless," I said. Mom shrugged. "It's not untrue. You made her stand outside, in the snow." She needed to understand the situation. That was it. Not anger, not shock. Something colder slid into place. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a decision they'd already justified. This was a verdict, not a debate. "Okay," I said. Mom blinked. "Excuse me?" Okay, I repeated. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I turned around and walked out. Behind me, Mom's voice sharpened. Sarah, you can't just... I closed the door. Outside, the cold slapped my face hard enough to wake me fully. I kept my hand firm on Ella's shoulder and walked her to the car. I buckled her in carefully, slowly. My hands were steady in that unnatural way they get when something inside you has already finished breaking. She looked at me, eyes wide, searching. Are we really homeless? No, I said, we're not. I started the engine. In the rearview mirror, my mother stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Calm, certain, a woman absolutely convinced she had won. The hotel room was aggressively beige. Beige walls, beige carpet, a framed picture that might have been a flower if you tried hard enough. Ella fell asleep with her coat folded at the foot of the bed. Not laundry neat. Emergency neat. I sat on the other bed with my shoes still on. The same question kept circling, sharp enough to hurt. How did it get this far? The answer came quietly. That's how the real ones do. It didn't start with the sold sign. It didn't start with the snow. It started with me being reasonable. I'm divorced. I travel for work. On paper, everything looks stable. A year ago, my parents called with that careful tone. Just a rough patch, just for a bit, just one bed. I said yes. Weeks turned into months. Temporary packed up and left without notice. They rearranged my kitchen, commented on my choices. Dad fixed things I hadn't asked him to touch. Mum started saying our house-like ownership could be practiced into existence. Ella noticed. They weren't cruel. They were polite, cold. Help that came with size and future debt. Ella stopped asking them for things. She stopped running to the door. At 7, she learned that love sometimes comes with terms you don't get to negotiate. Then Samantha became the focus. Wedding plans, houses she deserved, future grandchildren, not the one sitting quietly at the table with crayons. Then came the money talk. Soft at first, concern-shaped. I said no. Not loud, not dramatic, just no. That's when the house changed. And sitting in that hotel room, listening to the heater click on and off, I understood something I couldn't unsee. They hadn't crossed a line by accident. They had been walking toward it the entire time. They hadn't crossed a line by accident. That thought followed me into the bathroom, where I closed the door softly and stared at my reflection, like I was checking to see who I still was. I looked normal. Tired, yes, but normal, which felt wrong considering my parents had just told my 7-year-old she was homeless and left her outside in the snow. I picked up my phone. It buzzed immediately. I didn't answer. Not because I was being strong, because if I saw my mother's name on the screen, I would say something that would require a lawyer for a completely different reason. Right now, I needed one kind of help at a time. I stared at Ella through the cracked bathroom door. She was asleep on the bed by the window. One sock kicked halfway off, like her body still believed it was home and safe enough to be messy. Her coat was folded at the foot of the bed. Too neat, still emergency neat. A question I'd been avoiding finally caught me by the throat. How long was she outside? I called Brendan. He answered immediately, like he'd been expecting it. Hey, he said. Careful, not defensive, just careful. What time did you drop Ella off today? I asked, a pause. Not long. Thinking, not stalling. About 2, he said, 2-ish. Why? I did the math without writing it down. My throat tightened, my voice didn't. Okay, I said. What's going on? He asked, his voice jumped a notch. I'm not asking what you saw, I said. I'm asking what time you dropped her off. Around 2, he said again, I swear. I closed my eyes. Okay. Silence stretched, then quieter. Sarah, I didn't leave her with a stranger. I left her with your mum. I know, I said, and I did. Brendan avoids conflict like it's radioactive, but he's not cruel. He didn't know my mother would turn a routine handoff into a lesson in abandonment. I'm not blaming you, I said. He needed to hear it, and it was true. I just needed the time. Another exhale. Did Ella look okay when she got out of the car? Yes, he said immediately. She was fine, bundled up. She waved. I swallowed. Did my mom say anything? No, he said. She barely looked at me, which honestly felt like a win. I almost laughed. It came out like air. Is Ella okay now? He asked. She's asleep, I said. She ate. She's warm. Thank God, he said, and for once it sounded like a feeling, not a phrase. If anyone contacts you about this, I said, steady now, my parents, Samantha, don't engage. Just tell me. I won't, he said quickly. I'm not stepping in that. The smartest thing he's ever said. After I hung up, I stood there for a moment with my palms flat on the sink and let the number settle. 4 hours. Then I went back into the room, checked Ella again, and finally took my shoes off like a person pretending this was survivable on vibes alone. In the morning, Ella woke up hungry. That mattered. I want waffles, she announced, decisive. Of course you do, I said. This place charges $8 for bottled water. They can afford waffles. She smiled. Small. Real. We ate in the hotel breakfast area surrounded by other people living temporarily. I let her drown her waffles in syrup. Today, I wasn't the health police. Today, I was the stability police. Back upstairs, I put cartoons on and handed her the remote like it was sacred. Stay here, I said. I'm making a couple calls. Are you calling Grandma? She asked. No, I said. I'm calling adults who don't think a gate is childcare. She nodded, like that made sense. I stepped into the hallway and called the non-emergency line. I didn't cry. I didn't editorialize. My daughter is 7, I said. She was denied entry to her home. She was told she was homeless. She was left outside in snow for approximately 4 hours. The woman on the phone went quiet. Then her voice shifted. Careful. Professional. Address. Names. Times. When I hung up, I had a case number, not catharsis. Documentation. Back inside, Ella was watching cartoons. Cereal in a cup balanced on her knee like a tiny raccoon. Did you do the call? She asked. Yep, I said. Grown-up paperwork call. Are we still homeless? No, I said. We're just temporarily paying for a room with a flower painting. She looked at the wall. That's not a flower. That's what makes it art, I said. She giggled once. I held on to that sound like proof. Then I made the next call. A colleague had sent me a name with no emojis and no small talk. Call him. He moves fast. The lawyer appeared on my screen in a suit that looked like it had never wrinkled by accident. Sarah, he said, tell me what happened. I gave him the short version. He didn't gasp, didn't soften. He sorted facts like files. Do you own the house? Yes, sole owner. Did you authorize a sale? No. Are your parents on the deed? No. He nodded once. Then the sale is either not real, not finished, or not lawful, he said. Possibly all 3. Paper has a way of ruining confidence. He told me what he would do next. Identify the transaction, contact the title company, put them on notice. Do not contact your parents, he said. Do not warn them. Let them be surprised, I said. His mouth twitched when the call ended. Nothing in the room had changed, but the air had, because now this wasn't a family problem. It was a paperwork problem, and paperwork doesn't care who your mother is. Paperwork moves slowly until it doesn't. The hours after the lawyer's call stretched thin and tight, like a wire pulled too far. I kept my phone face down on the table. It vibrated anyway. Again and again. I didn't need to see the names to know who it was. Dad. Mom. Samantha. I ignored them all. Ella sat cross-legged on the bed, cartoons humming in the background, cereal long gone. Every so often, she glanced at me, checking my face the way kids do when they sense weather changing. I smiled when she looked. I kept my voice light. I kept my movements slow. Stability, even if I had to perform it. By mid-afternoon, my phone rang again. This time, it didn't stop. I stepped into the bathroom and answered without looking. "Sarah," Dad said. His voice was wrong, too high, tight around the edges. "We just got a call." I said nothing. "They said the file is frozen," he continued. "They're asking questions. This is ridiculous." Frozen. The word settled into me, heavy and exact. Mum cut in before I could respond. Her voice was clipped, sharp, furious in the way she gets when control slips through her fingers. "They're accusing us. You need to fix this immediately." Accusing. Samantha texted a second later. "What did you do?" I stared at the screen. I didn't know who had called them yet. I didn't know exactly what had been said. But I knew this much with certainty. Someone official had just told my parents no, and it had hit them like a car crash. I didn't call back. I didn't text. I turned my phone off completely and stood there in the bathroom, listening to the fan hum, grounding myself in something mechanical and neutral. When I stepped back into the room, Ella looked up. "Mom?" "Yeah, baby." "Are they yelling?" I exhaled slowly. "They're upset." "Why?" "Because they thought they could do whatever they wanted. Because they thought rules were for other people. Because they thought a 7-year-old was an acceptable casualty." "They don't like being told stop," I said instead. She nodded, like that made perfect sense. That night, Ella fell asleep without her coat folded at the foot of the bed. That small change felt enormous. I watched her for a long time in the dim light, then turned my phone back on just long enough to see the missed calls stack up like evidence. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I already knew what they meant. They had started the day certain. They were ending it afraid. 3 days later, I sat across from the lawyer in his office. It was aggressively normal. No leather chairs, no dramatic skyline. Just a desk, a printer, humming softly, and a man who looked like he'd seen this exact situation enough times to be tired of it. He didn't ask how I was. Good lawyers don't. He opened a folder. "Here's what happened." "Thank you," I said, a sentence with an object. "Your parents listed the house with a realtor," he said. "An offer came in. They accepted it. That's when the sold sign went up." "So it wasn't actually sold," I said. "No," he said. "It was under contract. Ownership transfers at closing." Good words, clear definitions. My body unclenched a fraction. "When I contacted the title company," he continued, "I told them 2 things. 1, that you are the sole owner. 2, that you deny authorizing any sale." And that's when they called my parents. "Yes." He slid the folder toward me. Inside were emails. Clean, boring, devastating. "Title ran ownership," he said. "Your name came up. Sole owner. No exceptions. That alone stops a transaction." "And they asked for proof?" "They did," he said. "They asked your parents to prove they had authority to sell a house they don't own." I leaned back. "And they couldn't." "They tried," he said. "That's the problem." He slid another document across the desk. I recognized it immediately. My name, my signature, language I had never agreed to. "This," he said, "is the power of attorney they submitted." I read it once, then again. Authority to sell real estate. Authority to transfer ownership. "That's not what I signed," I said. "I know," he said calmly. "The original document you described doesn't include this language. This one does." "So they added it," I said. "Yes." "After the fact." "Yes." The room went very still. "So when escrow called them," I said, "they weren't just told, 'We need clarification.'" They were told, "This looks wrong," he said. The moment you disputed authorization and they produced an expanded document, the transaction triggered a fraud review. I laughed once quietly. My parents have never reacted well to supervision. He closed the folder. This wasn't a misunderstanding, he said. It was a material alteration of a legal document. There it was. No drama, no emphasis, forgery. The word sat between us, plain and final. What happens now? I asked. We separate the issues, he said. You already reported the endangerment of your child. That stands on its own. This is different. He explained it cleanly. A fraud report prepared through his office. Formal notices sent. The power of attorney revoked in writing. The transaction terminated. And my parents? I asked. They are no longer treated as decision makers, he said. By anyone. I nodded. One more thing, he added, that they're still in the house. Yes, I said, that's a problem. He met my eyes. I can issue a notice to vacate. If they don't leave, enforcement follows. I didn't hesitate. Do it. He nodded. Your daughter shouldn't return until the house is clear. She won't, I said. When I stood to leave, my hands were steady again. Not because I wasn't scared, because the worst part was over, the moment where I thought I might lose. They didn't leave voluntarily. Of course they didn't. The notice to vacate went out clean and formal, the way authority sounds when it isn't asking. I didn't tell Ella. She was staying with a friend, safe and distracted, blissfully unaware that her grandparents were about to experience consequences for the first time in their lives. My phone lit up anyway. Mum first. Her voice was fury wrapped in injury, like she couldn't decide which one she wanted me to feel more. You have no right, she said, after everything we've done for you. Dad followed with apologies that never quite touched responsibility. This has gone too far, he said, as if I were the one escalating by refusing to let them steal my house and endanger my child. Samantha sent messages in bursts, long paragraphs that suggested volume might reverse reality. She accused me of tearing the family apart, of choosing money over blood, of humiliating our parents. I didn't respond. Blocking people isn't immature, it's efficient. The deadline passed. Enforcement was scheduled. I parked down the street the morning it happened, far enough away that I couldn't be accused of hovering, close enough that I could see everything. The house looked the same from the outside. White siding, familiar windows, a place that had held birthdays and late-night talks and quiet mornings before school. A place my parents had decided wasn't mine anymore. The deputy arrived on time. Clipboard, neutral expression, no interest in family dynamics. He knocked once, firm, waited. Mum opened the door with righteous indignation already loaded. I could see it in her posture, in the way she filled the doorway like a shield. This is a misunderstanding, she said loudly enough for the whole block to hear. The deputy spoke calmly, explained, waited. Dad hovered behind her, hands fluttering uselessly. Samantha appeared from somewhere inside, crying loudly, theatrically, like tears could be a legal argument. None of it mattered. When the deputy finally stepped forward, something shifted. Authority doesn't raise its voice. It moves. They argued, they protested, they insisted. The deputy didn't. Boxes came out. Not mine this time. Theirs. Arms crossed. Voices rising. The sound of a life being packed up faster than expected. Then my mother saw me. She broke from the cluster like she still believed proximity was power, marching straight toward where I stood by my car. I hope you're proud, she said, eyes sharp, voice shaking with rage and disbelief. I considered it, really considered it. I'm relieved, I said. Pride can come later. Her mouth opened, closed. She didn't have a script for that. The deputy finished securing the door and handed me the keys. The weight of them in my palm felt heavier than metal. "It's secured," he said. "Thank you," I said. I didn't watch them leave. I didn't need to. I brought Ella home that evening. She stood in the doorway, backpack slipping off one shoulder, eyes scanning the room like the house might argue back. "They're gone?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "They're gone." She didn't run inside, she didn't celebrate. She took off her shoes slowly and placed them by the door. Carefully, like she was reclaiming something that had been taken without permission. That night, she slept through without waking once. I stood in the hallway long after the house went quiet, listening to it settle. The familiar creaks, the hum of the fridge, the sound of safety returning 1 inch at a time. There were still reports in motion, still fallout coming, still people somewhere who believed this had happened to them. But my child was safe, and the house was quiet. 6 months later, the paperwork finished what I started. My parents were charged with forgery and child endangerment, probation, heavy fines, mandatory classes they still swear were unnecessary. I'm sure the judge appreciated their feedback. We don't speak anymore. No calls, no updates, no family meetings. Silence turned out to be very efficient. Ella is thriving. She sleeps through the night. She laughs easily. She calls our house home without hesitation, without checking the door first. As for me, I sleep just fine. I used to think betrayal announced itself. A raised voice, a slammed door, something dramatic enough to prepare you. But it doesn't. It sounds like normal conversation, repeated long enough that you stop hearing the warning underneath. It looks like politeness. It feels like family, until a 7-year-old is told she's homeless and left outside in the snow. So tell me, did I go too far? Or not far enough? What stayed with me wasn't the court dates or the paperwork. It was the space that came after, the quiet kind. The kind that lets you hear what you were ignoring before. Ella didn't talk much about what happened. Children rarely do. They show you instead. She stopped flinching at raised voices on TV. She stopped asking me where we were going next, just in case. She started planning again. Birthday ideas, school projects, things that assume tomorrow will look a lot like today. That's when I understood something important. Healing doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it just looks like consistency. For a long time, I thought family meant endurance, staying, absorbing, explaining yourself one more time in hopes that this time it would land. What I learned instead was quieter and harder. Family only works when responsibility travels both ways. My parents faced consequences, real ones, consequences that didn't bend for excuses or history or titles. And whether or not they ever fully accept what they did is no longer something I wait around to find out. That's not bitterness. That's boundaries doing their job. Do I believe people can change? Yes, but change isn't proven by words. It's proven by what someone no longer expects from you. What matters most is this: the cycle stopped. Ella won't grow up thinking love means waiting in the cold. She won't learn that silence is the price of belonging. She won't mistake control for care. And that feels like something worth protecting, even if it doesn't come with a neat bow or a family photo. Maybe one day there will be understanding. Maybe not. Either way, the foundation is different now. Clearer, stronger, built on choice, not obligation. And maybe that's the version of family is forever we don't talk about enough. Not the one where everyone stays the same, but the one where harm doesn't get passed down just because it always has been. So here's what I want to ask you. If you were in this situation, would you choose peace even if it meant distance? Would you wait for change? Or would you draw the line exactly where your child needed it to be? Tell me in the comments. I want to know how you see it. And if stories like this, about family, accountability, and choosing a healthier future, resonate with you, please like the video and subscribe too. Because sometimes the best ending isn't reunion. It's knowing the next chapter won't repeat the last.